कुमार स्वामी नायक है गोंगो लेवू लटोका रेडियो फीजी 2 में पुराना गाना लगे हमें बहुत अच्छा लगे
रेडियो फीजी 2 देश की धड़कन.
In the news tonight, Vanua Levu faces major transportation disruption. Fears of disease outbreak in Levu. And people start to pick up the pieces in Ra.
From the studios of FBC Suba, Edwin Nani.
Gulavinaka, Fiji. Road access between Lambasa and Savu and Nambawalu has been cut off by numerous landslides on the main service route. The network connects the three main centers in Vanua Levu but is closed to all vehicles, leaving no other means of travel by road. The route is used by people traveling by ferry to and from Vanua Levu via Nambawalu. It's also used to transport goods from Viti Levu. There are underslips at Korosomo Hill passing lane on Nambawalu Road between Lambasa and Senganga, Loma slip on Transinsular Road, Mako slip on Nambawalu Road, Tambia, Transinsular Road before Vunivesi Bridge and Somosomo Senganga on Nambawalu Road also have underslips. And Eleanor Turangaview joins us live from Lambasa. Eleanor, Vanua Levu experienced heavy rain again today. Has this made things worse?
Well, Edwin, it could make things worse if it leads to another massive flooding like we experienced here in Lambasa yesterday. Now, the heavy rain we have been experiencing, rather that we are experiencing right now, is threatening to flood areas that previously had... areas where waters have just receded. This is mostly the low-lying areas and areas close to the major rivers. Now, the major flooding we experienced yesterday, I believe, is one that we've experienced it after a very, very long time. Both the Lambasa and Ngawa River, they broke banks and there was flooding everywhere. Today, Edwin, while the main access roads and the town area, while the waters have receded in this place, there are still places that are still underwater. These include Mbulileka, Bodha, Mbombale, Urata, and Batinikama, Wunibao areas, Soso areas, as well as here in Nandabo, and many other areas where they are still underwater tonight. And most whose homes were flooded yesterday, they are spending the night again at evacuation centers today. I understand that they are waiting for this weather situation to pass, as well as the waters to completely subside. And Edwin, it is also important to note that a flood warning is still in force for all the low-lying areas adjacent to and downstream from all the rivers in Vanua Levu. And just lastly, Edwin, I just want to give a shout out to all the first responders, police officers, RFMF personnel, corrections officers and fire officers, as well as individuals who have been helping evacuate families from their homes at the height of TC Ana. They've been doing this, wading through the flooded waters, all drenched or just wet from the heavy rain. From us, thank you, Edwin.
Nakailinoa. Leptospirosis, dengue fever and typhoid outbreaks are high risk for most villages along the Wanimbuka River. Turangani Koro of Wailutua No. 1 village, Isoa Natambaleka, says the village has recorded a few cases of typhoid following disasters in the past. He is working with the community health workers to ensure no outbreak of such diseases post-tropical cyclone Ana. Josiah Nanunga was in Wanimbuka today and files this story.
This was the scene at Wailutua No. 2 village this morning. Disaster first responders and youth alike clearing the mess caused by the severe flooding yesterday.
We have started with our cleanup activity since this morning when the water level at the Wanimbuka River receded.
Turangani Koro Isoana Tambaleka says his concern now is the safety of villagers and to ensure there is no outbreak of communicable diseases that normally emerge after a disaster.
I have been advising all villagers to boil their drinking water. They need to remain indoors, otherwise wear protective gears when out in the fields or cleaning their houses.
Village elder Etonia Rokorombe says the safety and welfare of villagers with disability also needs to be prioritized in times of disaster.
Our safety should not be compromised. Villagers to place our safety and health paramount. But I'm thankful that is one thing villagers did first when the water rises rapidly, by moving us safely to higher grounds.
Those are the 5 houses that were used as evacuation centers to accommodate over 120 Wailotua villages when the floodwaters entered the village yesterday morning. Without taking any risk, the Turanganikoro has advised all evacuees to remain in those centers once a green light is given by relevant authorities. Jose Nunga, FBC News.
Most Fijians in the Ra province have reacted quickly to rebuild and rehabilitate after the passing of TC Ana. FBC News this morning visited a few villages in the province. Villagers were seen using whatever resources they have to sustain them while waiting for assistance from relevant authorities. Here is Josiah Nunga again.
Nalalawa village elder Iliorebi Wangakeve says about 5 houses were submerged yesterday, with household belongings as well as farms having been destroyed.
The Wenimbuka River rose rapidly in the early hours of Saturday. I told the villagers not to worry about the belongings and just to move to evacuation centers as life is more precious.
Wangakeve adds villagers, particularly the elderly, will be taking shelter at the community hall for some time, considering the current situation.
We are hearing over the radio about the heavy rain warning, so we decided for villagers who reside in low-lying areas to remain in the evacuation center until the weather turns fine.
Tombu villager Mareka Nakidhumbula says following any disaster, the villagers react quickly to rebuild and rehabilitate, which has strengthened their resilience.
About 10 houses in the village were underwater yesterday. This is the first time to experience the water level rose rapidly within minutes. Most of our farms have been destroyed.
Meanwhile, road contractors were seen clearing debris and landslides along the Kings Road, and villages situated along the Wenimbuka River are still without electricity. Jose Nunga, FBC News.
Floodwaters brought on by heavy rain since Friday have not receded in the village of Vuniniundrovu along the Princess Road, leaving hundreds stranded. Village headman Amasai, though, says it's been years since they experienced flooding of this magnitude. Lina Rees reports.
People living in Vuniniundrovu had to move to higher ground as water levels increased.
Our station too was not spared. Behind me here, a part of the flooded area is the village plantation. We thought our plantation on the hills would be spared. However, the strong winds also caused damage to our plantations on high ground.
Naitasiri Advisory Councillor Mahendra Chaudhry says they tried to assist as many people as possible before and during TC Ana.
We tried to save the people of Sawani, and at least, we just trying to tell to the people, please don't get moved. And the flood is coming very fast in the Sawani area.
Some families at this evacuation center at Rugby Cesar School went back to check on their homes. Many returned as their houses are still inundated with floodwaters.
Right now we have 9 families that are occupying the 4 classrooms in this school.
Villages and communities along Princess Road, that includes Sawani Village, Vuniniundrovu Village and Salambamba Place, continue to try to pick up what it is that Tropical Cyclone Ana has left behind. Lina Rees, FBC News.
Restoring power supply in the Northern Division will take up to 3 weeks as Energy Fiji Limited is carrying out damage assessments. Chief Executive Hasmukh Patel says they've restored supply to 75% of Suva and the rest will take about a week. He adds for the Lambasa areas there's been no restoration as yet. Savu has 10% and Tavyuni has 9% restoration. He says within the next week or two, a decision will be made on whether they need to send more personnel to Lambasa. Assessment is also underway in Levu.
So all I'm saying is the damages are there and it's going to take a little time. But as I said, majority of the areas should be back within a week. Then some other areas deeper inside rural, probably 2 to 3 weeks. And way up in the hills, it could take even up to 3 to 4 weeks.
And we join Apanisa Wangai Rondovu live now. Apanisa, what is the situation tonight?
Edwin, as of now, there are over 10,000 people in evacuation centers around the country. The highest being the north, where 5,766 people are taking shelter in in 155 evacuation centers. In the Eastern Division, there are 733 people in 14 evacuation centers, and in the Central Division, there are 1,230 people taking shelter in 74 evacuation centers, while 2,530 people are taking shelter in 75 centers in the Western Division. On to education, the ministry says it is still receiving reports from all divisions on the impact of tropical cyclone Anna on schools. Minister Rosie Akbar says all schools remain closed as most evacuation centers are still active. Edwin, we also have some good news. Amidst all the devastation, 2 fishermen who went out fishing last Thursday, and since then they were missing, they are now safe in Ndrovuni Ono in Kandavu. The Turanganikoro in Ndrovuni says the first was found after villagers saw the man struggling at sea, and the second relative of the man was found later on a nearby uninhabited island. Well, the man's family says their survival is nothing short of a miracle. Edwin.
Minaka Panisa. Up ahead, Waindamu residents experience worst flooding, and evacuees running out of ration.
मैं तो दिल्ली में रहता हूँ और रेडियो फीजी रोज सुनता हूँ.
रेडियो फीजी 2 देश की धड़कन.
Welcome back. Many residents forced to leave their homes along the Suva-Nausori corridor to escape the devastating effects of TC Ana are somehow making ends meet. Families staying in evacuation centers face several problems, and food shortage is one of them. Dipesh Kumar reports.
For many families, losing their belongings in the cyclone has been traumatic, and now they are looking for a way to survive.
Since we're in the school, some school teachers, they came in with breads and butter. And we didn't even manage to get anything. Like, we just pick up some clothes and all. That's the only one that we are having right now.
Like, I went to fishing. The small fish was inside the fridge. Now we cook it in the Vishnu Day. We just have it now. We're going to go back. And I was thinking if the weather will be good now, then I will be going fishing again.
We had enough food in the last few days because we moved here on Friday. But now, we are coming out of food. We need food.
For parents like Amelia Nakaruru of Nausori, their effort to send their children back to school has proved futile, as most of the stationery has been damaged.
I'm a widow, and my son is today we'll take my son to Sevilla, the boarding school, and we can't. He's the one here to help, and we're just waiting for some help from government.
These evacuees will remain here for a few more days, as their houses are badly damaged. Many of them have run out of ration and are hopeful they'll receive help soon. Dipesh Kumar, FBC News.
Villagers of Nangara in Kandavu felt the effects of tropical cyclone Ana last night, which left a trail of damage. Turanganikoro Isai Rakandruti says some homes are partially damaged, livestock lost and produce destroyed, and a lot of debris is lying around due to strong winds and heavy rain. Kelly Vadala reports.
This was the scene in Kandavu just before nightfall as TC Ana started wreaking havoc.
Most of our plantations are affected. We still haven't gone out to see how bad it is because it's all underwater. We rely on our dalo, cassava and fresh produce for daily consumption. The strong winds took down most of the trees and roofs were blown away.
Isai Rakandruti says villagers have started cleanup along with damage assessment of affected areas. He says they are lucky that everyone in the village is safe.
We are lucky that no one is missing or got hurt during the cyclone. Residents living nearby the sea evacuated early yesterday. But for now, we are focused on getting our lives back on track with whatever assistance will come our way.
The island was affected by storm surges as well.
The waters did not recede until early this morning. We just made sure children were kept away from the waters because there was a lot of debris earlier today. But the weather has calmed down. We are just left with the structural damages to deal with.
Villagers say the destruction left behind by TC Anna is similar to TC Winston in 2016. Villagers took the necessary precaution in advance this time around to avoid being caught off guard. Kelly Vadala, FBC News.
Flooding had a worse effect in the Nausori corridor than strong winds associated with tropical cyclone Ana. Those living in informal settlements and low-lying areas say this was the most scariest experience for them. Jeshulal visited the Waindamundamu settlement in Nausori today and files this report.
48-year-old Sushil Sharma has been living here for almost a decade and says this is the first time floodwaters reached their doorsteps.
It has been 10 years for us to live here, but this kind of flooding is the first of its kind. The water level is still not receding.
Many of these residents who escaped to the evacuation centers are waiting for floodwaters to recede before they can begin their cleanup.
Water level has reached to the height of my knees. All our belongings are wet and damaged.
See the people how they cross there. Very hard to come out from their house.
This is the first time we have experienced a flood like this. Many people have gone to the evacuation centers with the help of the police.
More than 300 people are said to have been affected by TC Ana, which caused havoc in the Central Division. Residents say their daily routine came to a halt from Friday when rain and flooding started. They are now cleaning up and hoping to get back to normalcy tomorrow. Jeshulal, FBC News.
People in a number of settlements in flood-prone areas of Sigatoka are glad they were spared from major flooding this time around. With lessons learned from the past, many of these families were prepared by last Friday. Felipe Naicaso has more.
Families in these settlements say they always take weather warnings seriously and prepare themselves accordingly.
Actually, we did not receive much rain in Sigatoka in these places, but our river is long way from the side. So when there is a lot of rain, we get easily flooded. The water pushes from the back and it comes to the drain in front here.
With around 75 houses in the area, families that were situated at the lower end had moved majority of their belongings to higher ground. The residents say that due to the heavy rain over the weekend, floodwaters entered only a few houses.
Got some houses there, Tope. People can go there. Some people we call here to stay here, like that. Some people go to the school, the Methodist school here.
The worst flood that we had was in 2009 when the old bridge broke. And after that, there was one small one in 2012. After that, only a little bit there and it goes down because we have a dredging in Sigatoka River. So that helps us a lot.
While there wasn't any significant damage in Sigatoka, a few evacuation centers are open as people had moved in as precautionary measures. People who live near the Sigatoka River also prepared for the worst when the advisory was sent out. It was also business as usual in Sigatoka town today. Felipe Naicaso, FBC News.
While many families vacated their homes to seek shelter elsewhere at the height of TC Ana, others say their prayers got them through the night. Residents in informal settlements in Nandera told FBC News police had come to assist some families, but a few preferred to stay back. Apenisa Wangairandovo reports.
When strong winds were blowing off roofs in Viraisi, Nandera, Cholamelinga Tukana says he was aware of what can happen to their home, but insisted they stayed back.
The wind was really strong. Many houses were damaged. The people were moving to evacuation centers. When all this was happening, my family stayed back, and we were just praying for our safety.
Rusila Sabo says she feared moving her family as the winds were really strong.
When roofs started flying around, I prayed asking God to protect us. We couldn't move because it was really dark and there was heavy rain, so we didn't want to move as we will risk our lives.
A resident who moved his family to the evacuation center for safety says his home wasn't secured.
I was the last person to leave Veiraisi to come here seeking shelter. At one point the wind almost blew me away. I struggled to get here. I've lived in the community for many years, and so far this wind was really the scariest.
Similar events happened in many other informal settlements around the Nausori corridor. Police had to come in and move families when the wind was strong. But still, there were people who insisted on staying and seeing the storm through. Apenisa Wangairandovo, FBC News.
Fijians living in informal settlements in Dombati, Nasino are feeling blessed that they received no major damage from the tropical cyclone. Community members say they followed the weather advisories closely.
These residents were prepared but say if the wind had picked up further, they would have suffered huge loss.
The houses too were about to blown away, but it doesn't happen here. Any house been blown out, but it was really strong, about category 3 as I estimate.
Another resident says this was one of the scariest experiences for them.
This one is a very powerful windy and rain, and this is good damage our power line. The tree fell down there.
The residents are now clearing debris and say in the future they will consider moving to evacuation centers. Apinisong Kandavu, FBC News.
And now to business with Whitney.
Thanks, Edwin. Coming up in business tonight, effect of TC Ana felt by Suva retailers. And reconstructed PIF Fale opens ahead of August meeting. Stay with us.
हमारे सामने नाइक है गोंगवा लेवू लटोका रेडियो फीजी 2 में पुराना गाना लगे हमें बहुत अच्छा लगे
रेडियो फीजी 2 देश की धड़कन.
Most businesses in Lambasa remain closed today following the heavy flooding yesterday. All businesses in town were under almost 2 meters of flood water after the Lambasa River burst its banks. Lina Rees reports.
Only a handful of business owners were in town checking out their shops and cleaning up the mud and debris left behind by the floods.
This in the morning, check the shop, and there was a pigeon feather to clean the shop. As we see too much water inside, muddy, my stuff is alright, not damaged.
Jay Kumar of Classic Electronics says this is the first time they've experienced such a big flood and it damaged most of their goods.
I nearly can cry. When I saw this thing, my head was not good. When I went home and I see a lot of people, and I very feel sorry about everybody.
Earlier today, members of the public were allowed to conduct their business before 5 p.m. when the cleanup of Lambasa town was to commence. Lina Rees, FBC News.
The sudden change in curfew hours last week affected businesses in the capital city. Retailers say Saturday is usually a busy day for them, but due to the weather warnings, they had to close their business by midday. Suva Retailers Association President Jitesh Patel says it was challenging to get the word across to members.
A lot of retailers were not happy, but at the end of the day, it's a call of the authorities. We have to respect that. And some of them closed down. Most of them had closed down because we had given a newsletter out to all the retailers in the city to close down at 12:30. And they were on the verge of closing down, and then this thing came in.
The customer were rushing to go home, and by the time the curfew go back to normal, the town was empty and there was no customer.
The National Disaster Management Office announced last Friday that curfew was to be from 4 p.m. on Saturday until 4 this morning, but this was revised after change in the weather. Sharon from HFC Bank joins us now with the latest from the money market.
Good evening. A quick look at trades on the South Pacific Stock Exchange for last week. Around 32,000 shares were traded in over 200 transactions, valued at about $70,000. Following this, the market value for the SPX fell by 0.37% and concluded the week at $3.43 billion. On the U.S. stock market, the battle between hedge funds and retail investors kept traders cautious. Wall Street is bracing for more volatility after the retail investor groups organized via social media targeted hedge fund short sale positions, with some traders worried that the wild swings in GameStop and other shorted stocks could foreshadow a market correction, which means the market rebalances to a new equilibrium. Closer to home, the risky Aussie dollar dipped following new signs of weakness in the economic recovery of China, which is a key customer for Australian commodities. Data from the weekend showed China's factories' recovery slowed in January, weighed down by falling export orders amid a surging global pandemic and rising costs. And that's all from your HFC Bank for now. Vinaka.
Here are the local exchange rates as set early this morning. It was a mixed day for the Fiji dollar as it gained against one of our major trading partners, the Aussie dollar, as well as the Japanese yen. The Sangamoli was down versus all the other currencies we cover. The commodities market was mixed. Oil prices was down a few cents but remained fairly steady around $52 a barrel. Gold rose a few dollars, closing at $1,857 per ounce, and silver closed up at $28.45 an ounce. The reconstructed Pacific Islands Forum Fale was officially opened by Prime Minister Voreqe Bainimarama last night. This will be a central meeting point for Pacific Island leaders when they convene for the 51st Pacific Islands Forum in August. The forum has 18 full members, plus associate members and partner states. Bainimarama says their success is not just measured by their membership, but by their accomplishments rather. He says as one collective voice through the Pacific Islands Forum, they've confronted serious challenges in the region.
With the support from the larger countries of Australia and New Zealand and other partner states and organizations, Pacific Island states have boldly and unashamedly asserted our interests and exercised our rights as sovereign nations through this forum. We have never assumed that our size should relegate us to a backseat in determining the future of this region, or indeed the world, and we never will.
And that's it from Business Tonight. We now join Jamie with the latest in sports.
Thanks, Whitney, and good evening. Ahead in sports, parks closed for repairs, and youngsters all set for uprising sevens. This and more coming up.
हमारे सामने नाइक है गोंगवा लेवू लटोका रेडियो फीजी 2 में
Ratudakmbau Park in Nausori and Lambasa's Subrel Park may not be able to host sports events anytime soon. Both parks suffered damage from the wrath of Tropical Cyclone Ana and will be closed for some time. Aquiladama reports.
Sunday's second CVC match between Suva and Lambasa will now be played elsewhere as Ratudakmbau Park will be closed for repairs.
We will have to engage the expert, especially the engineers, to see the cost of the damage that's sustained and also arrange funding for the repairs. So it might take, I think, a couple of months before we can get the place up and fixed.
The ground is pretty much playable, but it's the structure that needs a lot of attention.
The damage sustained is mainly to the roof of the pavilion and the perimeter fence. We are now fixing the perimeter fence with the assistance from staff from Nasino Town Council. So that probably can be fixed very soon.
While minor work started today at Ratudakmbau Park, this was the scene at Subrel Park in Lambasa yesterday, and it will also be closed for business for a while.
Paramount consideration, of course, is the safety of the spectators and the players, and therefore, at this stage, it's very hard to say how long it will be closed, but I can tell you for sure it's not going to be open for the next 1 month, that's for sure.
The unavailability of Ratudakmbau and Subrel Parks mean Lambasa and Rewa will now have to play their home league games elsewhere. However, no one knows at this stage when they'll return to their home turf. Aquiladama, FBC Sports.
After winning the Super Series Shield, the Dominion brothers hope to go a step further in this weekend's Mobile Uprising Sevens. The young team has been turning heads in major tournaments locally and has big plans for the Uprising Sevens. Tale Materkula reports.
The players are no strangers to each other. They've played together since high school, but it's the little things that need to be ironed out.
Our basic skills, just to touch upon it. The simple passing and running, tackling, just to get those signed up.
They are well prepared, just some handling skills, and because I've been watching last week's game, and
Those are the weak areas.
Some players are out with injuries sustained during training and in the Super Series 2 weeks ago, but the team have high confidence in their substitute players.
Boys know that they have a big responsibility on their shoulders this week, and I believe the boys will do their best this week.
We just need to know one step ahead, but our main aim is for the cup final.
The Dominion brothers are in a tough pool as they will battle defending Super Series champs Police, Yamadhya and Wainrauso from Sawani village in Naitasiri. The Uprising Sevens tournament will kick off on Friday at the Uprising Sports Complex in Pacific Harbour. Tali Materkula, FBC Sports.
National netball rep Aliti Torimbao knows she'll need to give it her all to make the final Pearl squad. The 19-year-old, who is part of the 44-member national extended squad, says her biggest challenge is performing to the benchmark set by selectors, especially as she competes for a spot in the team against other experienced players.
It was very challenging because training with all the players, and we need to come up with their level, and we have to meet the standard. And if we want to meet the standard, we have to pull up our socks and all.
Fiji football golden boy Roy Krishna scored twice as his ATK Mohan Bagan rallied back from 2-0 down to beat Kerala Blasters FC 3-2 in the Indian Super League this morning. Liverpool is slowly getting back to form after beating West Ham 3-1 in the English Premier League. Mohamed Salah scored for the first time in 7 EPL games with a brilliant double. In play of the day, Bristol Bears star Semir Ranranra has taken the rugby world by storm once again after scoring a scintillating 65-metre try against Bath in the Premiership on the weekend. Ranranra was in fine form as the Bears cruised to a 48-3 thumping of Josh Matavesi and his Bath side. That's it from Sports Tonight and New Media. Biden administration vows to protect U.S. from Huawei. Details coming up.
कुमार सर ने नायकर गोंगवा लेवू लटोका रेडियो फीजी 2 में पुराना गाना लगे हमें बहुत अच्छा लगे.
रेडियो फीजी 2 देश की धड़कन.
Welcome back. In new media, the Biden administration says it will work to safeguard American telecom networks from untrusted vendors like Huawei that threaten national security. As Tiziana moved off to the southeast and the threat of another cyclone dissipated, it was a day of mixed weather across Fiji, with conditions ranging from sunshine to showers. Gale and heavy rain warnings remain in force for Vanua, Levu, Taviuni, Lomaiviti and the Lau group. A flood warning remains in effect for streams and rivers as well as low-lying areas. In the west, they had some early morning rain, followed by cloudy skies with the occasional sunny break. From Pacific Harbour to Suva, early morning cloudiness and light showers gave way to hazy sunshine and brisk winds in the afternoon. And up in the north, scattered showers, heavy at times, accompanied by gusty winds. At sea, strong winds from the west-northwest are generating very rough seas. Turning to the tides, the next low tide is at 3:40 a.m., followed by high tide at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Sunrise is at 5:51. The outlook for tomorrow is more unsettled weather with scattered showers and gusty winds. For Wednesday, we should see an easing of conditions. And in Fijian Pulse, we ask, what is your message to law enforcement officers who risk their lives during Tropical Cyclone Ana?
I just want to thank the police officers for risking their life, for saving the people, and while we were still in the comfort of our home, they were out there for the others.
I just want to take this time to thank the Fiji Police Force for risking their life during the cyclone.
Just want to thank the police officers that they risk their life during the hurricane.
Thank you, police officers, for risking your life.
And recapping our main stories, Vanua Levu faces major transportation disruption, fears of disease outbreaks in Levu, and people start to pick up the pieces in Ra. For these stories and others, you can tune in daily to our sister radio station Gold FM. To our poll question, last week we asked, are Fijians becoming complacent about the diabetic lifestyle? Close to 54% answered yes. This week we are asking, should those found swimming in flooded areas be prosecuted? Visit our FBC News website to answer. And on to our shot of the day, police officers have been commended for their efforts in rescuing people in vulnerable areas during the cyclone. And you can send us pictures and videos on email, fbcnews@fbc.com.fj, or share it with us via our various social media accounts, including Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. That's your news for this evening. I'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe. Modemanda.
हमारे सामने नायका गोंगवा लेवू लटोका रेडियो फीजी 2 में पुराना गाना लगे हमें बहुत अच्छा लगे।
रेडियो फीजी 2 देश की धड़कन।